Developer Digital CyberCherries has just released new Retro Arcade, which is a virtual reality trip back to my childhood years and all my misspent time and pocket money down in my local arcade. When I first purchased my Rift, I purchased it with the hope that it would transport me to fantastical places or entertain me with immersive experiences. And while this has happened on many occasions this past couple of years using the Rift, I feel that new Retro Arcade is the first experience that has truly transported me back to my childhood, creating a believable environment that I could quite happily spend many hours exploring and relaxing in. The arcade room is fairly compact but jam-packed with arcade units which are all lovingly rendered with original artwork. Having spent many hours on their real-life counterparts, it's amazing how much detail I can remember when looking at the cabinet graphics, even though it's been a good 20 years or more since I used to haunt my local arcade. To play the games, it's a simple matter of looking at the cabinet you wish to play and pressing X. This will load the game ROM and the game will start up. Unfortunately, most of the ROMs that load up in New Retro Arcade are not the original arcade ROMs, but the Game Boy Advance version of the game. This is very noticeable to me as I'm from an older generation of gamer, but this is easily fixed as the developer has included instructions in the README file on how to replace any of the ROMs in the game. Some of the arcade units are not playable as they have stools in front of them. This is an annoyance as the unit I most wanted to play was the Street Fighter 2 unit. I can always load this ROM into another arcade unit, but it would have been great to play this rendered inside the actual unit with all its original graphics. When you want a break from old arcade games, you can always try your hand at bowling. The physics for this game are pretty good and I used my Xbox controller to play. However, this would be a lot better if you could use a Razer Hydra and had another player to play against. Speaking of which, New Retro Arcade is strictly single player for the moment. Developer CyberCherries has stated that they don't plan to support multiplayer, but this could change in the future. Along with bowling, you can also try your hand at darts or a basketball hoops game. Again, this can get pretty boring pretty fast if you're playing by yourself. Dotted around the arcade, you will find Game Boys, the original versions. Each Game Boy has its own Game Boy title to play, and just like back in the day, the screens are impossible to see unless you have it under correct lighting. Fortunately, the developer has included a flashlight button, but this certainly isn't enough for the majority of the Game Boy games as the contrast on the screen is far too dim to comfortably play a full game. Also dotted around are cassette tapes, lots of them. I laughed when I asked my 12-year-old daughter to pick up a tape when she was in the Rift and she just replied, "What's a tape?" which made me feel quite old. You can bring your tapes to the Ghetto Blaster and switch them out to play your chosen song. All the music is then streamed in from the web and it's a great touch of authenticity to the whole experience. One nugget I really enjoyed was when I found a cassette tape labelled Betamax and put it into the stereo. The stereo came back with format not recognised and silence. Overall, if you're a child of the 80s or early 90s, you're going to love New Retro Arcade. A novel idea which is beautifully realised and a must play for any Rift owner.